I did respect him. I don't respect him anymore because he say I'm not gonna do what they want me to do and this and that. And
Stands no chance. But then I watched it the next month. I was like, he actually did way better than I thought he would have did. But people forget Jake Paul, well, rostered Ohio State roster, so he's tough. He's not as good boxer as good skill, but he's tough.
Jake Paul beat Anthony Joshua. That's insane. That's not real. That's not real in any facet. There was never a chance. Never.
All right, so here's what went down. Canelo Alvarez completely destroyed Jake Paul with his words after that Anthony Joshua fight. And this wasn't some light criticism either. The man came out swinging verbally, telling Jake he needs to stop this whole fake boxer routine. What really stung about Canelo's words was how he basically laughed at Jake for thinking he belonged in a ring with real fighters. We're looking at two completely different worlds here. You've got legitimate championship-level boxing on one side, and whatever Jake's doing on the other. Canelo didn't sugarcoat anything when he said Jake should stick to being exactly what he is. Stop trying to be something you're not, was basically the message, instead of pretending to be on the same level as fighters who've dedicated everything to this sport. The whole thing was harsh, but that's exactly how Canelo wanted it. No fake politeness, just straight-up truth from someone who actually runs the boxing world.
everybody make a mistakes, right? But you need to do your best or do what you do, not try to be something else. Just do your best as a person. Sometimes it's enough. Sometimes for people it's not.
Dillian White dropped some truth that nobody was really shocked to hear. Jake Paul getting destroyed by Anthony Joshua was basically guaranteed from the moment they stepped in there. But here's what caught White off guard. Jake actually hung in there way longer than anyone thought he could. The guy showed he could take serious punishment, and White thinks that toughness probably comes from his wrestling days. That background taught him how to absorb damage and keep moving forward. Now let's talk about what really happened in that ring. Jake wasn't trying to win anything, he was just trying to survive. Playing it safe from the very first bell because he knew what would happen otherwise. This is exactly where White says it needs to end, though. We're talking about getting your face rearranged, taking shots that could mess you up permanently. No amount of money or attention is worth that kind of damage. White made it clear that if he hit in there with Jake, the whole thing would be over quick. Jake proved he's tough as nails, but staying in this game is just asking for serious problems down the road.
Then I watched it the next month. I was like, he actually did way better than I thought he would have did. But people forget Jake Paul, rostered Ohio State roster, so he's tough. He's not as good boxer as good skill, but he's tough. Wrestling is a very competitive sport in America, and to be Ohio State wrestling level, you have to be they're physically tough and physically strong. So yeah, he was tough. That's why he survived in there. He did what he had to do in there. He got tagged with a few shots, and he did extremely well. AJ did poor.
In those situations where the fighter is that negative and had those kind of tactics, he went to ground a few times, etc. I don't think people quite understand it. It doesn't matter who you are; it's quite difficult. People expect AJ within 20 seconds to literally, with the first punch thrown or the first jab thrown, just to knock him out. It's not that easy, is it? When a fighter is kind of going in there to just survive.
It's always easier to beat someone that's coming to win than someone that's in there to survive. But they should have known that. They should have known that Jake Paul is never going to come to win. But it's just mad that AJ couldn't cut the ring off. He just made him run. He couldn't cut the ring off and hit with punches, and he was swinging and missing a few times. And obviously Jake Paul was hitting with a few punches. I was like, I was surprised that he and I was surprised that it took so much runs to get him out of there. And then when he did knock him out, he didn't knock him out outright. He broke his jaw and stuff, but Jake was alright. He just sort of got up and just said, my jaw is broken. He didn't get struck. I was kind of surprised. I was very surprised. Because that right hand was a big one. I thought, damn, okay. He took it and got up. So maybe Jake is a physically tougher and stronger person than people think he is.
I'm assuming you don't blame Joshua for the money being talked about, 40, 50 million, for doing that. No.
No. I'll take that. I'll definitely take that. I'll fight Jake Paul next if he wants it. I'll take that. But I'll go after him though. I'll tell you what, I'll do put him away 1 or 2 rounds. No way he's getting past that. Because that's like that's such a big moral victory for Jake saying that he wins so much rounds against Joshua.
Canelo Alvarez said something that might actually shock people. Jake Paul has gotten way better since he started this whole boxing thing. His technique, timing, and ability to take punishment have all improved, and you can see the difference when you watch his fights. The guy's work ethic is legit, and he's clearly putting in real time with actual trainers trying to learn proper boxing fundamentals. You can tell Jake's been grinding in the gym working with people who know what they're doing. And this is huge. Canelo made it crystal clear that even with all this improvement, Jake needs to walk away right now. He's already pushed way past what he should be doing facing guys who are completely out of his league. Every single fight is risking permanent damage that could change his life forever. Canelo was straight up about it. Jake's done enough to prove whatever point he was trying to make. Time to step back before something really bad happens. Canelo has always called out Jake's opponent choices, pointing out how he keeps fighting retired guys or people who aren't even competitive anymore. His comments show exactly what the boxing world thinks about Jake's matches being more show business than real competition. When someone jokingly asked if Canelo would ever fight Jake himself, his answer was perfect. He said maybe when Jake turns 50 years old, or even older than that. That sarcastic response shows exactly how Canelo sees Jake's place in boxing right now. There's this massive gap between real champions who live and breathe this sport and celebrity fights that are just designed to sell pay-per-view buys while making a joke out of competitive boxing.
I hope he improved more and he do a really good job. Believe I say this in serious. I hope he doing really good job and improve in boxing and it's fine.
Would you ever entertain a Jake Paul fight?
Not right now. Let's see later when I have like a 50.
Brendan Schaub laid out something that should be obvious to anyone who knows boxing at all. Thinking Jake Paul could beat Anthony Joshua is living in complete fantasy land. Sure, Jake's got decent power for someone fighting around 200 pounds, which is actually pretty impressive. But that's still nowhere close to what elite heavyweights bring to the table. We're talking about a gap so huge, it's not even worth discussing. The difference in experience, technique, and physical ability between Jake and someone like Joshua is like comparing a high school player to a professional athlete. Schaub hammered home that no amount of social media hype can change reality. Doesn't matter how many followers Jake has or how much buzz his fights create online, Jake definitely shows heart and determination when he steps in there. Nobody can say he doesn't give everything he's got. But when you strip away all the promotion and entertainment value, he's still completely outclassed by real-world class fighters. The idea that he could hang with the best in the world is just not realistic. It highlights this huge difference between being internet famous and actually being elite at boxing, which takes decades to achieve.
Jake Paul beat Anthony Joshua. That's insane. That's not real. That's not real in any facet. There was never a chance. There's never a chance. And the Jake Paul fans, and I was getting this a ton from DMs and comments going, well, everyone has a puncher's chance. That's an uneducated opinion. A puncher's chance, yes. If they're in a bar and Anthony Joshua's there at the pub and Jake Paul were to sneak up behind him and hit him in the back of the head or, in the side or something, maybe, even then, he's a little light in the ass, but maybe that's a puncher's chance. In a professional bout where a professional fighter at the level of Anthony Joshua is at, and he is going into a ring knowing and expecting to get hit, there is no puncher's chance when there's that much discrepancy in talent level. There's not, especially when the size difference. And some of you will say, Jake Paul hits hard. To you, yes, to you. But also, Jake Paul hits hard for a 200-pound man. He wouldn't even measure in the top 1,000 professional heavyweight boxers in the world as far as the strength knockout meter, if there is such a thing. It's not possible. So a lot of you were tuning in for saying, well, he has a puncher's chance. That's not real. That doesn't exist here. And now they could do this, but I don't think it's going to get the same amount of views, but it would set expectations. If when this fight was announced, Jake Paul's team said, hey, we're fighting Anthony Joshua. Who thinks we can last 8 rounds? Who thinks we can go all 8 rounds? Who thinks Jake Paul can go 8 rounds?
Brendan Schaub broke down why thinking Jake Paul could beat Anthony Joshua is just pure wishful thinking. Jake's power is legit impressive for his weight class. You have to give him that. But we're talking about a completely different level when you get to elite heavyweight territory. The gap in experience, technique, and conditioning between Jake and top fighters like Joshua is absolutely massive. It's like comparing someone who's been doing this for a couple years to someone who's made it their entire life. Schaub emphasized that all the social media attention in the world can't bridge that kind of divide. No matter how viral Jake's content goes or how much online buzz he creates. Jake deserves credit for his heart and effort in the ring. You can't question his determination when he shows up to fight, but the reality is, he's still way out of his depth against legitimate championship-level competition. That's just how it is. The whole idea that he could compete with the absolute best is unrealistic. It shows the huge difference between celebrity status and internet fame versus real boxing skill that takes decades of total commitment to develop.
Your takeaways from the 6 rounds that we saw, presuming you watched?
I was impressed with Jake Paul. I thought that, following on from what we're saying, right? A few years ago, he was on Disney as a kid, acting up, and has decided to become a professional fighter. That takes balls, but he's obviously striving to be as good as he can be. You can see that in the way that he moves, the way that he is developed in how he's punching and performing. But to make a 2-time world heavyweight champion that's still live, you know, AJ's still got something about him, to make him miss in such an accomplished manner. All right, so at times he was jumping out and running around, but there were times when he was well in range and still making AJ unable to land a clean, solid shot. He deserves a lot of respect for that. And then the shot that actually finished the fight, that broke his jaw quite badly, didn't put him out. That shot's that shot he threw with serious intention has put a lot of professional heavyweights to sleep. He didn't go to sleep. He actually finished on his knees, didn't he? Laughing and spitting blood out of his mouth. So, like they say, like it's a special type of crazy and a special type of brave to do it. But I actually, hats off to him, because he showed that he's developing some accomplished little skills in there to look after himself. The size difference is always going to fatigue him.
I know everyone will come with the idea that, well, AJ should just go in there 1 round and smash him to bits, and that should be it was a big ring, right? Perhaps he could have cut the ring off a bit better, but would I be right in saying that regardless of skill level, if you forget about that with the 2 for a second, if someone is on the back foot on their bike and doing what Jake was doing, it's difficult, no matter who you are, no matter the kind of separation in skill level.
It's a big ring, and you've either got to run at him and look like a novice yourself, or just take your time and understand that he's going to slow down.
Adam Booth gave Jake Paul credit where it was actually due after breaking down his performance. Jake managed to make Anthony Joshua miss quite a few shots throughout that fight, which is pretty impressive considering the huge gap in skill and experience. Booth noticed Jake's movement and footwork had gotten significantly better compared to his earlier fights. You could see more discipline and technical awareness than he'd shown before. The fundamentals were clearly something Jake had been drilling hard in training. This smarter approach actually forced Joshua to stop and think multiple times instead of just walking through him like he normally would against weaker opponents. While Jake's still nowhere near professional elite standards, let's be honest about that. Booth pointed out that these moments showed real progress in Jake's boxing development. It proves that with better movement, patience, and defensive positioning, he can make even top-level fighters work harder than they expect and think twice before throwing their biggest shots.
To your point, Jake Paul wasn't so much moving laterally all the time. He was literally running. Look at some of those rounds. He was running. He was going north to south, not side to side. He was running. Anthony Joshua should have been able to cut the ring off. And the times that AJ had Jake Paul cornered, he couldn't get shots off. He wasn't going to the body. He wasn't using his superior size on Jake. I heard Nikisa Badarian say afterwards that AJ was leaning on Jake. Come on. Jake was leaning into AJ, falling into AJ, and that's why those clinches were taking place. AJ is purportedly one of the best heavyweights in boxing. AJ believes he's on the level that he should challenge Tyson Fury. That wasn't the kind of performance that makes me believe Anthony Joshua is still a high-level heavyweight.
Well, you're wrong again. Anthony Joshua didn't look great because he wasn't allowed to look great. When you're in there with a smaller fighter that refuses to engage, which refuses to box, to fight, he's running. Think of Canelo Williams' school. Canelo didn't look good, and he got accused of not being able to.
Okay, can I just 1 second? 1 second. I knew you were going to go there.
Oh,
Williams' school is or was an undefeated 168 pounder with a deep amateur background. Jake Paul is a guy who lost to Tommy Fury with no amateur background. So don't compare the two. Don't compare Williams' school to Jake Paul. It's not the same thing.
No, but I can compare a man running for his life and another man running for his life. These guys didn't want to engage. They didn't want to try to win. Now, I told you, Jake Paul was going to look for one shot. That's the overhand right. And once he misses that, he's going to realize he's in for a long night and a painful one.
Sergio Mora shared his honest disappointment after watching Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, explaining the fight didn't show the technical skill he was hoping to see. He noticed Jake stuck to really basic movement throughout the whole bout, constantly moving straight forward and straight back without much side-to-side work or lateral movement at all. This simple back-and-forth approach actually made it harder for Joshua to land clean shots because Jake kept creating distance every time Joshua tried to close in. Mora pointed out that while Jake's strategy helped him survive dangerous situations and avoid getting seriously hurt, it showed a lack of the complexity you need at high-level boxing. The limited movement stopped Joshua from working angles effectively and setting up his best combination punches. Joshua had to keep resetting and chasing Jake around instead of cutting off the ring and trapping him in corners. Mora's breakdown shows that even though Jake displayed toughness and defensive awareness, his overall footwork and ring intelligence stayed pretty basic compared to what experienced professional fighters bring to championship-level fights.
I thought it was going to go rounds. I wasn't sure if there was going to be a silent agreement. I wasn't sure there was going to be a sparring match agreement that will spar for a while. I wasn't sure. I was honest about it. That's why I said it's going to go rounds. I wasn't sure if there was an understanding that, we'll play a little bit and then we'll get a little more and, whatever. So that was part of it. But there was real parts. Say that's the fixed part. That's the WWE part. That's where the people, and I'm with you. I get it if you want to think that. Here's why I picked rounds, and this is what I think I saw, and I know that in my mind I saw, was the fact is that a lot of people didn't think about. 15 months off. And there was going to be some ruts. There was going to be some hesitation. There was going to be some time. You get knocked out by Dubois. Freaking 15 months ago. There were going to be ghosts in the attic. I don't care who you're fighting. You get in the ring again. It's going to take a minute to exercise those ghosts. The rust. You want to call it rust, whatever. It's going to take 5-6 rounds to get rid of the rust. But it's going to, the doubt, the self-doubt, the being in the ring for the first time with nothing in between after being knocked out. That was going to be a play. And then the size of the ring, 22 by 20. It's usually 20 is pretty usually around average. And it's 22 by 20. More room to elude, more room to move around, right? I thought maybe go in there with track shoes. He didn't go with track shoes. He should have probably had better ankle support because he hurt his ankle a little bit. And that he did. He rolled his ankle a little bit. So I thought those were real factors, physical factors, not WWE factors. Also, some of the other factors was that Joshua is not a fast starter. So here you got 15 months in activity, not a fast starter to begin with. Come on, you with me, people? Now you are, because now we already know it went more rounds than we thought.
Petty Atlas gave a really detailed breakdown of Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, emphasizing that his prediction about the fight going several rounds came from real boxing strategy, and understanding, not any suggestion that things were fixed or predetermined. He explained that Jake was dealing with challenges completely different from anything in his previous boxing experience, both mentally and physically, stepping up to an entirely different level of competition. According to Atlas, this fight pushed Jake to an intensity and focus he'd never had to deal with before in any of his other matchups. He had to handle both the physical damage from Joshua's power shots and the mental pressure of facing a world-class heavyweight who's competed at the absolute top of the sport. This whole experience showed toughness and ability to adapt that Jake hadn't necessarily displayed before. It demonstrated his willingness to take serious punishment and keep fighting, even though the outcome wasn't going his way, and he absorbed significant damage throughout the entire contest.
Come back in 2026, and I don't think he fights a ton in 2026. I think it'll be a very slow year for him. Look for those two guys as the main two he would fight. I wish it was Tommy Fury, but I doubt it. On the other side, I want to see him get back into boxing specifically, get back into committing to this, because there is a massive, massive fight that awaits him in Tyson Fury. It's far past time that it happened. If they don't do it now, they never will. And yeah, man, I don't really know what else to say on this fight. As far as, what happened in there tonight, I know on Twitter people are going to want their money back, or they're going to call it a bad fight or a sloppy fight or whatever. And then there's going to be people, celebrating Jake's downfall. That was always going to be the case. Of course, the first time he gets rocked, dropped, and stopped, people are going to celebrate like it's the 4th of July, or it's their birthday, or like it's Christmas. So yeah, expect that, but I won't do that here. I won't, because I respect the hell out of him for going and doing it, and there's not any normal people on earth that would have done it. I don't care if you say, oh, for the money I would have, you're lying. And there's not many pro boxers that would have done.
The commentator Wade broke down Jake Paul's overall approach, noting that his strategic thinking came from his unique position in the boxing world. Unlike traditional champions who have to defend belts and face mandatory challengers, whether they want to or not, Jake had complete freedom to focus on high-profile fights that bring in massive pay-per-view money and social media attention. This flexibility let him carefully choose his fights based on entertainment value and financial gain instead of strict competitive requirements that most boxers have to deal with. Wade suggested that while Jake probably felt confident about his past wins and believed in his skills, his tactics during this fight showed careful risk management and energy conservation. The goal was maximizing opportunities for bigger fights ahead and setting up even more lucrative matchups down the road.
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model, right? Now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to watch. We did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here's a two-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul. And we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age, to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so, because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there. There's the Tommy Fury rematch. There is ways for Jake Paul to sustain what he's doing.
Boxing analysts, Brian Campbell, and others highlighted Jake's defensive game plan as crucial to his performance, breaking down how he handled facing such a dangerous opponent. They pointed out his heavy reliance on movement and elusiveness, staying mobile and avoiding getting trapped in corners where Joshua could unleash his devastating power. This approach let him last longer than most experts and fans thought he could, frustrating Joshua at times and showing tactical awareness that demonstrated real improvement from his previous fights. However, despite these smart tactics and his ability to make Joshua miss repeatedly, the fight ended with Jake taking a serious hit that nobody wanted to see. Reports confirmed he suffered a broken jaw during the battle, which is an extremely painful injury that shows the real dangers of facing elite competition and the severe physical cost of high-stakes matches, especially especially for someone relatively new to professional boxing.
For those of you that thought that the Anthony Joshua-Jake Paul fight was going to be rigged, these x-rays definitely tell a different story. So on December 19th of 2025, as I'm sure most of you are probably aware, Jake Paul fought the two-time unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua at the Casillas Center in Miami, Florida, which was streamed exclusively on Netflix as part of a major boxing event that was promoted by Paul's Most Valuable Promotions. The ending result was Anthony Joshua won by knockout in the 6th round after Jake Paul was knocked down 4 times in total, twice in the 5th round and twice in the 6th round. Anthony Joshua landed 48 punches on Jake Paul compared to Jake Paul landing about 16 on Anthony Joshua. And this is the second professional loss of Jake Paul's fighting career, dropping his record down to 12-2. Now, Jake Paul ended up suffering a double broken jaw during the fight and was taken to the hospital afterward, skipping the post-fight press conference, probably because he probably couldn't talk. But in his in-ring interview, he said, "That was crazy. I had a blast. I think my jaw is broke." Anyway, as far as his professional fighting career is concerned, as of December 20th of 2025, he doesn't have any new opponents that have been announced, and it's expected that his jaw injury is going to take 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. Regardless of how you feel about him, that dude fought a 2-time heavyweight champion and survived. And I think we can all agree that regardless of how you feel, that takes some serious intestinal fortitude.
So, here's the bottom line about Jake Paul's broken jaw situation. This is a serious injury that needs proper attention and recovery time period. Given how severe this type of damage is, he absolutely needs to stay out of the ring for now and focus completely on healing up. This injury really shows the intense danger of stepping in there with a top heavyweight like Anthony Joshua, who can knock people out with either hand. Even though Jake did his best to avoid the big shots and used defensive tactics throughout the fight, the punishment still took a massive toll and caused significant damage. Getting back in the ring too early could cause permanent problems and make his recovery take way longer, potentially creating complications that stick with him forever. He's looking at weeks, maybe months of rest and rehabilitation ahead, so putting his health first is absolutely critical right now. This injury is basically a clear warning that jumping back into high-level boxing without proper recovery would be extremely dangerous and reckless. Taking the time he needs to heal properly is the only smart move for his body and whatever his future career ends up looking like.